She stormed up my driveway like she owned the whole neighborhood, slamming a paper against my door. "Your wife owes $300 to the HOA," she barked, her voice loud enough for the neighbors to peek out of their windows. My wife stepped outside, holding back her temper. "We're not paying a fake fine. Show me where in the contract it says this." Karen's face turned red. "Don't argue with me. I'll call the cops right now and have you dragged out." Before I could even answer, she dialed, screaming into her phone. "We've got trespassers refusing to follow HOA rules. Send officers immediately." Within minutes, a police cruiser pulled up, lights flashing. My wife stood her ground, calm and firm, while Karen pointed at her like she was a criminal. "Arrest her!" Karen shrieked. The officer stepped out, hand resting near his belt, scanning the scene. His eyes narrowed when he finally looked at me. The color drained from his face. He froze mid-step, then stammered, "Commander?" Karen blinked in confusion, not realizing what just happened. "What are you doing?" "Arrest them!" she shouted again, but the officer didn't move. His hand dropped away from his belt, and his voice softened. "Sir, I didn't know this was your residence." Karen's smirk faltered as she looked between us. Realizing something was very wrong, my wife crossed her arms, steady as ever. "So still think this fine is real?" she asked quietly. The silence from the officer said it all. Karen's eyes darted between me and the officer, confusion twisting into rage. "What's wrong with you?" "Do your job!" "They don't follow HOA rules." "Arrest her!" she snapped, spitting the words like poison. But the officer didn't move. His jaw clenched and he straightened up, almost like he was standing at attention. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "you need to calm down." Karen let out a bitter laugh. "Calm down? I am the HOA president. That means I'm in charge here. These people can't just do whatever they want. This is my community." She jabbed her finger at my wife again, so close I thought she might actually poke her in the chest. My wife didn't flinch. "This land is ours. You don't get to make up rules just because you feel like it," she said, her voice steady but sharp enough to cut. Karen turned redder, stomping her foot like a spoiled child. "Officer, do I need to call your supervisor?" "You're wasting time!" The officer hesitated, then glanced at me. I could see the sweat forming at his temple. Finally, he lowered his voice, almost like he didn't want Karen to hear. "Sir, do you want me to handle this, or do you want me to call the others?" Karen's mouth fell open. "The others? What others?" "This is ridiculous!" She whipped out her phone, dialing furiously. "If you won't do your job, I'll get more officers down here myself." The officer gave me a look, one that told me Karen had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Karen paced in circles, barking into her phone. "Yes, dispatch? Send more units. These people are dangerous. They're threatening me!" Her voice cracked as she added fake sobs for effect. My wife and I stood silently, watching her performance like it was some bad reality show. Moments later, the sound of sirens echoed from the road. 2 more squad cars pulled up by the lake house, tires crunching on the gravel. Karen straightened her shoulders and smirked, convinced she had finally won. "Now you'll see what happens when you mess with me," she gloated. But as the new officers stepped out, everything shifted. The first officer stiffened and immediately saluted. The others followed suit. Karen froze, blinking in disbelief. "What are you doing?" "I told you to arrest them, not—" "Ma'am!" One of the officers cut her off sharply. "You need to stop speaking right now," Karen gasped. "Excuse me? I'm the president of this HOA. You don't talk to me like that." The lead officer ignored her and looked straight at me. His tone carried respect. "Commander, awaiting your order." Karen's jaw dropped. She spun toward me, her face pale. "Key Commander, what?" "What is going on?" My wife tilted her head, the hint of a smile curling her lips. "You really picked the wrong family, Karen." Karen stumbled back, her confidence draining as the word commander echoed in her head. This has to be a mistake," she stuttered, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. "He's just pretending. He doesn't look like any commander to me." The lead officer didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, you've already made multiple false reports today. That's a crime in itself." He gestured toward the clipboard in Karen's hand. "And that fake HOA notice you delivered? That's called harassment." Karen's face twisted with panic. "Fake? No, I'm protecting the community. I have every right to find them." My wife calmly unfolded a paper she'd been holding the entire time. Actually, this is the deed to our land, she said, handing it to the officer. No HOA jurisdiction. Not then, not now. The officer glanced at it, then nodded. It checks out. This property doesn't fall under the HOA. Karen's voice shot up several pitches. That can't be true. I run this neighborhood. I finally stepped forward, my voice low but cutting. You run nothing. And the more noise you make, the deeper you're digging yourself. Karen's eyes darted toward the police cars, toward the saluting officers, then back at me. For the first time, she looked scared. But instead of backing down, she screamed, "No! You can't do this to me! I'll shut this whole place down!" The officer stepped closer to her, his hand moving toward the cuffs. "Ma'am, you might want to stop talking." Karen's face twisted with rage as the officer reached for his cuffs. She yanked her arm back and shouted, "Don't you dare touch me! I'll sue every one of you! I'll have your badges by tomorrow." Her voice cracked, but the desperation in her eyes betrayed her fear. The officers didn't budge. One of them calmly said, "Ma'am, resisting right now will only make this worse." Karen spun toward the neighbors who had gathered at the edge of their yards. Phones raised, recording everything. "You're all witnesses. He's abusing power. They're lying. This is a setup." But instead of support, the crowd just stared, whispering among themselves. Some even laughed quietly. My wife spoke up, her tone sharp. "You came onto our land with a fake notice, called in false reports, and tried to humiliate us. Now everyone sees the truth." Karen stomped her foot, trembling with anger. "No one will believe you." That's when one of the officers held up a small body cam clipped to his chest. "It's already recorded, ma'am. Every word, every threat, every lie." Karen's eyes widened, and for a split second she looked like a child caught stealing. Then she tried one last desperate move, turning to the lead officer. "You can't arrest me. I am the HOA president." The officer looked at her coldly. "Not anymore, you're not." He snapped the cuffs around her wrists. The crowd gasped, some even cheering as Karen shrieked, "This isn't over! You'll regret this!" But no one looked convinced. Karen thrashed in the cuffs, her voice echoing across the lake. "You're all making the biggest mistake of your lives. I control this neighborhood," she screamed, but her words only sounded weaker with each outburst. The officer guided her toward the squad car, while the others kept a careful eye on her. My wife and I stood side by side, watching as the same woman who had stormed our doorstep minutes ago was now being dragged away in front of everyone. One of the neighbors shouted, "About time someone stopped her!" and the crowd murmured in agreement. Phones were still recording, and I knew by tomorrow this footage would be everywhere online. Karen's reign of terror was over, and she didn't even realize how public her downfall had just become. Before sliding her into the back seat, Karen tried one last time to claw her way out. "You can't do this! The HOA board will back me up. They'll throw you off this land!" Her voice cracked with desperation. The officer slammed the car door and shook his head. "The board won't save you. Not with the charges you're facing." I stepped closer, my voice calm but firm. "Karen, you should have thought twice before trying to play with people's lives, especially mine." The officer who first arrived turned to me. "Sir, we'll file the reports and keep you updated. She'll be charged with harassment, falsifying documents, and filing false police reports." He paused, lowering his voice. "Frankly, she might be facing more once the DA reviews everything." Karen banged on the window from inside the car, her muffled screams filling the air, but no one paid attention anymore. My wife took a deep breath, her hand brushing mine. "It's finally over," she whispered. But I knew this was just the beginning. The police cars rolled away, their flashing lights fading down the road, but the echoes of Karen's shrill voice still lingered in the air. The neighbors slowly dispersed, some shaking their heads, others smiling with relief. For the first time in months, the street felt quiet, peaceful even. My wife leaned against me, her voice low. "I almost can't believe it. She's actually gone." I gave a small nod. She thought she was untouchable, but the truth always catches up. Just as we turned to head back inside, one of the younger officers approached, looking uneasy. He lowered his voice. "Sir, I need to warn you. Karen wasn't working alone. We've had complaints from other residents saying she's been coordinating with a few board members. Fake fines, intimidation, even illegal liens. My wife's eyes widened. So this wasn't just about us? The officer shook his head. No, ma'am. She's been running a racket. We've opened an investigation. There might be arrests coming for others, too. I tightened my jaw, realizing Karen's downfall was only the first domino. Keep me updated, I said firmly. The officer nodded and headed back to his car. My wife slipped her hand into mine, whispering, if she's got allies, they won't stop here. I looked out across the lake, the moon reflecting off the water, and felt the weight of what was coming. Karen had been loud, reckless, and easy to expose. But whoever else was behind her, they would be quieter, smarter, and far more dangerous. And something in my gut told me they weren't finished with us yet. That night, the house was quiet, but neither of us could sleep. Every creak of the wood, every shadow on the porch light kept my wife awake. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the documents spread before me. The deed, the HOA letters, and now the officer's notes. Karen was out of the picture, but the thought of her allies gnawed at me. Around midnight, a car slowed down in front of our property. Its headlights swept across the windows. Then it idled for a moment before driving off. My wife peeked through the blinds, her voice tense. They're watching us. I placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Let them watch. We're ready this time. The next morning, word spread fast. Videos of Karen's arrest were everywhere. Neighbors' social media pages, local forums, even the news picked it up. Comment sections were flooded with people cheering. Finally, someone stood up to her. Hosts think they own us, glad they got put in their place. But with the attention came new pressure. The HOA board called for an emergency meeting. Some members tried to distance themselves from Karen, claiming they had no idea what she was doing. But documents told another story. Signed papers, forged notices, and hidden bank transfers. The police moved quickly. By the end of the week, 2 more board members were arrested. The community watched in shock as the very people who claimed to protect their neighborhood were exposed as frauds. When it was finally over, the officer who had saluted me on that first day came back to shake my hand. Sir, thanks for letting us do our job. People like her. They count on others being too scared to fight back. I nodded. I didn't fight for this country just to be told I can't live free on my own land. My wife smiled softly, her hand slipping into mine. For the first time in a long time, the air felt clear. Justice had been served, not just for us, but for everyone who had been bullied into silence. And as the sun set over the lake, I knew one thing for certain. No one would ever try to take our home from us again.